episode of High Low Sports. We got a special edition for you. Breaking news this weekend. Had to be talked about on the show. As you know, half of this podcast duo, if you would, is a diehard Colts fan. So, DJ, your boy, Andrew Luck, retiring at the ripe old age of 29. How you feeling? First thoughts on it.
The initial thoughts were, what the fudge? How, what, who's still Adam Schefter's account, and who's tweeting off of it? Who's getting away with this? But then as it started to become more and more, basically it became real once we realized it was a real thing. It was kind of shocking. At first I was like, why? What? Are you kidding me? What happened? Then when you sit down and think of it, that dude has more injuries in the last 4 years than most MMA fighters have in their whole careers. He had, just going down a short list off the top of my head, he had a concussion issue. He had torn abdomen, a lacerated kidney, which I remember going back to that. Doctors compared that to a car crash victim when he got that against the Broncos. He had that labrum / completely decapitated shoulder that he went through that he played a year and a half on. He had multiple concussions. I know one he missed the game for. Now this ankle, calf, knee, lower extremity, pirate leg issue he has going on with that is not healing. How can you really blame the guy? I mean, he has basically got the worst case of cauliflower body ever. Just you've taken so many hits early in your career. It's going to add up really quickly. I mean, I know he's a big, strong guy, and there's guys like Big Ben who takes a lot of hits, but that's a lot of small nagging issues that are going to really annoy him later in life. Luck's had big ones that are basically killing him right now. Like, when we watched that press conference, we were practically tearing up for him just to see what he's going through. Like, I mean, you've been through some injuries as well. Like, we both still are annoyed from our high school and post-high school injuries. You especially with your knees and lower body extremities.
Oh, yeah. No, this is, I mean, I told you when I watched the press conference, it was hard for me to watch that and not feel for the guy. Like, watching his press conference, like Doug Gottlieb tweeted that if you can't make it through PR, how weak are you? Like,
basically calling him a millennial because he's having trouble with rehab. First, we're gonna get the Doug's. Doug's an idiot. I mean,
that's gonna come up later on. We're gonna get to that, but no, just like the thought to say that man has put his life on the line literally for his team. If he had this offensive line currently when he first came in the league, I don't think we're talking about this right now.
If he had an eighth of this offensive line from the beginning, basically, probably doesn't go through as much.
But no, just watching that press conference, man, that is a warrior who is being forced to give up his love of the game. Like, he doesn't want, you can see it too. When he teared up and when he's talking about his family, he was literally just, it was that hard, like, you can tell he has shed a lot of tears over the last however long it took him to get to this point. And I don't buy it's been a week and a half. I think this has been a long-term thought process for him because he's a smart guy.
I mean, he graduated with honors from Stanford in architecture. That sentence alone is a PhD in itself.
Exactly.
And he even mentioned it like he's been mulling it, like with that shoulder injury. He was mulling it back then too. He's like, God, things just can't get right. Like, what if I'm never going to get right? I don't want to have a crippled arm my whole life. But then as it got better, and with the new coaching staff and the new offensive line, I think that reinvigorated him. He's like, okay, I can do this. But then right back at it, your ankle falls apart. It's hard to keep going under those circumstances. And like you said, he has a family. I believe he has a kid on the way, that sort of thing. He's thinking, do I play football and love it now for like 5 years and then be trash when I'm 40? Or do I cut bait now, think about the family long term? And how can you get mad at a guy for picking that, honestly? I mean, get in, you get rich, you get out. I mean, that's what it's kind of the name of the game. Like, that's what they talk about fighters should do. Get in, get your money, get out. It's kind of the same with football. Not everyone can be Tom Brady. He's a different standard of, oh my God, how is he still playing? And Drew Brees, like, that's weird. Yeah. That shouldn't be the norm. I mean, Peyton Manning was a skeleton his last 2.5 years, basically. Like, basically, he was only around because he was so damn smart, but we don't know what he's going to be like in 10 years with that. He had a similar kind of thing where it wasn't just a career-altering injury. It was a life-altering injury.
Yeah, his spinal column was, literally solidifying, calcifying. And so it was the narrowing of the spinal column for Peyton. And with this impingement issue with Luck, like, that's not something you just let go. I mean, you talked about the lacerated kidney. That by itself.
He was literally peeing blood.
Yeah.
Like, that'll screw with anyone. Go pee blood and tell me how I feel afterwards.
Exactly, yeah.
Look at you, Doug.
Yeah, seriously. And then, you come back from that. Then you come back from basically a shoulder that doesn't ever work again.
And that's after playing 15, 16 games on it.
Yeah.
That, and that wasn't behind this offensive line. That was behind a pretty bad, cheap offensive line. Like, we're going to get into some numbers and stuff like that later, but it wasn't exactly being protected into his last full season before this last season.
No, this was, and this is, honestly, I love watching Andrew Luck. I will say that I wish he was a quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. One, because injuries wouldn't have been a thing for him.
God, he'd be a monster if he had that Cowboys offensive line.
But also, I mean, he's just such a good guy. You don't ever hope this for anybody, let alone somebody who is really, he's a role model for a lot of young athletes coming into the game, like, of what you're supposed to be like as an athlete, as a competitor.
As a human, too.
Yeah, as a human, like, especially as a human. I mean, he got a degree.
That's not just any degree.
No, not just any degree.
The degree of degrees.
Yeah, he got an architecture degree, which is not an easy. It's not like getting your general studies degree like some guys did. Yeah, communications from some schools.
Not trashing on any degree. I'm saying there's levels. That's all.
Yeah, but no, he got an architecture degree from Stanford. He's not said a negative word about an organization that has been known for, well, let's just be honest,
killing him.
Yeah, I mean, the Colts are not the most stable organization in the front office to begin with. I mean, your GM has been busted for what, coke and hookers at one point in time?
Well, that was the owner. The current GM and coach situation is actually competent. That's what we saw last year. Even Andrew with 5 games of basically getting back into it. Then they win 9 out of 10 at the end of it. I mean,
but it's just, I don't know, man. He's never said a word wrong. He's always been right. He gets sacked by a guy and thanks him for hitting him hard.
He says, good hit mid-sack while he's throwing the ball. It doesn't even say, like, good job, big boy, as Terrell Suggs is eating him. By
the way, still completing the pass 10 yards downfield to T.Y. Hilton somehow, which we'll get to T.Y. in a second.
T.Y.
I feel like he's probably going to be the most affected guy out of all this, unfortunately.
Him or Eric Ebron, definitely. But going forward, too, like, we kind of talked about a little bit, like, whose fault is this? Obviously, a little bit of it is not really anyone's fault. It's just the nature of the game. Like, people get hurt. Part of it, we're going to start with the lower part. Part of it is Andrew Luck's fault.
Yeah.
Early in his career, he held the ball really long. Like Bruce Arians in that deep throwing offense, sometimes he held the ball to make a big play. Like a lot of quarterbacks do, but that's a little bit different. Next up, it's honestly Jim Irsay's fault next. And I'm breaking this by tears. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but he kept a regime around he saw his quarterback getting assaulted relentlessly, but Andrew's overcoming it. Like, even like Chuck Pagano, great guy, fantastic guy, what the Colts did for him and what he said about Luck during the preseason game, fantastic guy. But as a head coach, he just didn't have it, whatever it was. Yeah. And he's a defensive guy, so you don't really want him in charge of your young franchise quarterback. But even he said, like, I was able to keep my job much longer than I should have thanks to Andrew Luck. Which could just be him being like a nice guy, but I think we all kind of know that at the same time.
Yeah, that's the truth.
And then, of course, the former GM Ryan Grigson. What are you doing? You were, if I'm not mistaken, he used to play in the trenches back when he played too. You come in with a guy who's thought to be the next prototypical superstar quarterback, which I think that's part of the reason he left too, is like all this expectation heaped on him before he even got a chance to play. Now the injuries are kicking in. I guess he didn't want to be, what could have been and be broken at the same time.
Yeah.
He's like, I would rather be, what could have been, but be healthy and comfortable.
Exactly. And I'll agree with you. I mean, you got to put a little bit of the onus on Luck himself.
Like that's a little small. Like we're breaking it by a pie. We're looking at like maybe 8 to 10%.
Exactly. Yeah, and some of it's just you got to know once you start getting injured, you got to know you can't be the guy taking a fumble and diving back across the line.
Still one of the best plays in Colts history.
Absolutely, the best play I've ever seen from a quarterback. Like just a heads up play like that. That was probably top that I can even think of right now. But yeah, definitely the best in the Colts history. But you can't be doing that long term. You can't be taking on giant linebackers.
You can't be breaking Vontaze Burfict's neck at the goal line.
Yeah,
that was probably number 2 on
after you roll out and break a tackle and then go for 5 yards, you just need to get down. You don't need to try to run over that linebacker or that corner. It's not going to help you. But yeah, you're right. He's about only 10% of the issue. Like honestly, I do put it on the former GM. Like if you're a former offensive lineman, the number one thing, if you have a number one quarterback like they had with Andrew Luck, it's still hard for me to say had, but they had with Andrew Luck, you can't just put Joe Schmo over here and Tim, what his name is, that you saw around the corner at left tackle, like.
Let's get that guy eating a lot of donuts at right guard.
Yeah. He won an eating contest? He's our center. Like, no. Like, you got to spend quality draft picks to get the guys up front to protect your number one guy. We've seen it with number one guys all the time. We see with the older Carr. Led the league and being sacked how many years in a row?
Basically, Andrew Luck got the David Carr treatment. The only difference was I think Andrew had a little bit more talent. I don't want to say talent because that's like insulting Carr, but you know what I mean? Like he had a little more upside, and he came from a football background. Which I think is part of the reason he's leaving too. He's seen former players what's like afterwards. I mean, his dad being a former quarterback, he's hung around those guys. He has seen the after results, like how many guys have committed suicide with CTE. The guys like Earl Campbell, he's a legend, all-time great. He can barely walk now.
Yeah.
Like, you look at guys that he has seen what happens, so he's probably thinking, nope, not worth it at this point. I think if you take away the ankle injury, he's still probably questioning, like, okay, I'll keep going, but if I keep getting injured, I got to think. This ankle, I think he was like, the fact they can't diagnose it, too.
Yeah, and,
like,
and
you don't know what
that's
it is.
another thing is it brings me to the training staff, the doctors they're using. Are they just not going to the right doctors, or is this as big of a mystery as it is actually seeming? Like, there's no way this has never been seen before. In the history of sports and injuries and things like that, there's got to be some way to figure this out. And I just don't know if they're taking them to the right doctors, if team doctors are just kind of doing that manly thing of rub some dirt on it, it'll be okay.
You got to wonder, too, because this is the same team doctors, or the same team. I don't know the exact staff, but excuse me if I'm a little bit wrong here, but it's the same team who had doctors who said, like, oh, Peyton probably won't be able to play again. He needs another surgery. They question that. Oh, Luck's shoulder, he'll be fine in a week. Like, there's been a lot of questions recently with the medical staff in Indianapolis. And as someone who is a fan of the Colts, like, as a big fan of Andrew Luck especially, too. Like, I remember joking early in those years, like, if they trade Andrew Luck to, say, the Cardinals, I'll be a fan of the Cardinals, sort of, just because he's that kind of dude. You can't help but root for him. I just don't understand what's going on with the medical staff there. How do you miss everything? And they tend to have a lot of injuries year in and year out, too. Like, last year was one of the rare anomalies where they were mostly healthy, and, well, we saw what they did. They clicked. But even before that, in Andrew Luck's previous years, the years where they were terrible without Luck, there was injuries galore. So you got to question that training staff, too, a little bit.
Absolutely. It's they talk about all these injuries, and this is one thing I guess maybe the Patriots have over a lot of teams, is their training staff has been around for a while. Their strength and conditioning staff has been around for a while and been successful for a long time. The Colts, I mean, you think about all these big players for the Colts over the last 10, 15 years, they've all kind of had to leave because of injury. It's not been, it's not been just because they're getting old. Most of them are having to, leave the league because of injuries. And so you're right. You do have to start to question, is it the staff? Is there something going on? And just, nobody's, I don't know, maybe just they're not looking in the right places, or maybe they just need to find a whole new staff. I mean,
I will reiterate, too, like, just for people who maybe missed the earlier part or just kind of tuning in at this point, we're basically breaking down how we think we got to this point, and we did touch on some of this. The onus is on Andrew, of course, you can't ignore that. Some of it is just dumb, unfortunate luck. I mean, how many times do you see great players? I mean, a guy who chimed in on the Doug Gottlieb stupidity, Troy Aikman, your boy is a Cowboys fan, he called Doug an idiot, too, and Troy's career was cut short by concussions. I mean,
absolutely.
He could have played 5 more years easily.
And that's another Fox guy. Like, that's a Fox guy on Fox guy. That's like they're in the same building. And
I don't think anyone is taking his side on this one besides idiots that were booing, honestly, which I'm going to come back to that, too. We got a lot to talk about because a lot has happened, because it's kind of the biggest story we've seen in a while, honestly, maybe even since Peyton Manning decided to go to the Broncos or something like that, just because you don't see franchise quarterbacks in their heyday just retire, honestly.
No, not at all. And like Gronk, don't get me wrong, Gronk retiring at the time he did was surprising, but not as surprising as this was like,
because we saw Gronk limping around basically. Like, he was a shell of himself, and he's a position that gets, I don't want to say hit more, but like in the trenches as well as a guy who catches over the middle. We're like, okay, he's on his last leg. His job is to run. It's probably over. Luck, he was an MVP candidate last year for a while, honestly. And he was poised to be an MVP candidate this year.
He was at the Pro Bowl less than 12 months ago talking about what he has to look forward to with this team. Like, this wasn't a pre-planned thing. Like,
this was an unfortunate like smack in the face. He's like, I don't blame him. Like, obviously I don't think he's going to come back either. I mean, a lot of things like maybe he'll come back at 32, take a few years off. I don't think he will, honestly. Like, he'll know better. Like, if I come back at 32, just risking getting hurt again. I think this is if he comes back, it will be next year. It won't be in like 2 or 3 years, but.
Yeah, and you mentioned Troy Aikman, and I texted you this once we found out, and when you were at the wedding, I was like, look, man, This reminds me of watching Troy Aikman. Like, unfortunately for Luck, the difference between him and Troy Aikman is Troy Aikman was lucky to be on a Cowboys team that had the success while he was there, getting those Super Bowls, getting to all those NFC Championship games. Like,
a winner, basically.
Yeah, I mean, Aikman looks like a winner, whereas unfortunately for Luck, I mean, we talked about this, that we think he plays for another 5 years. He's a Hall of Fame guy. Easy. Hands down.
Unfortunately, right now, he's kind of Grant Hill, Derrick Rose, where it's like, God, that was some success, but it was over and derailed way.
Yeah, or Gale Sayers, these guys that were flash in the pans. Reggie Bush, like what we all thought Reggie Bush would be coming out of college is kind of how I feel about Andrew Luck right now. Is he was good. He was damn good when he was playing.
Top 5 quarterback in the league, arguably. I mean,
this messed up both of our quarterback rankings going forward.
This was going to come out in about a week or so, but I had Luck in that. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm going to spoil it. He was in the top 2. I had him behind number 1 going into the league just when you count in all the weapons, a full off season, but then the cap started coming in and I moved him down a little bit, and now he's, I don't know, let's just say it's looking a lot different now. But
yeah, he was in my top 5 as well, and it sucks. It's hard to, it's crazy because we're removed from it for a little bit. This has been 2 days since we found out, right?
Yeah.
But if you guys go look at our Twitter page, you'll see our response to the immediate aftermath is we're going to stick our head in the sand and pretend like this isn't happening because there's no way this is happening.
Like when I saw this, I went straight to Twitter, and it wasn't quite taken off on Twitter. It's like, oh, someone was screwing with me. And then next thing I know, I see the Shefty tweet, and I'm like, oh, great, it's real. Then I started checking. I was like, oh, God.
We need to get Schefter some Schefter bombs or something. Unfortunately, though, whenever Schefter releases a Schefter bomb, it's never good for whoever he releases. It's like somebody's retiring, somebody's injured, somebody's getting arrested.
And in a case like this,
we need Woj bombs for the NFL, Schefter, not Schefter bombs where it just ruins everybody's day.
I want to hear basically DeMarcus Lawrence resigns right away. I don't want to hear, oh, by the way, Andrew Luck's retiring. He's planning on leaving tomorrow, but we're going to break it today. So that puts him in which obviously it's his job. I'm not it's like, damn, it just sucks it came out this way. Especially Luck, who's been such a great guy. He's he wanted to go out in his way, and he didn't quite get to do it his way.
And it forced the press conference up a day, and
then his team. Then he unfortunately was in that position where the fans were booing him, which I'm not gonna. I hate it, but I'm not someone who's kill those fans. They need to die. They're awful. I'm of the mindset where it's you're wrong for booing, but I'm not gonna throw you under the coals. That's not fair. You're probably just traumatized. What's he doing down there? He's retiring.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Luck's probably sitting there there's that little meme with him talking to Brissett. Brissett has the ultimate what face, which could mean Andrew's hey man, you about to start? You ready?
Yeah.
So that was just a little bit unfair to everybody, and it kind of sucks. But back to we've been getting off track. There's so much to talk about. Andrew, he's such a big time player and such a weird exit. But I'm gonna round things back to why I think Ryan Grigson, the former GM, is to blame. You look at when he first came into the league, most hit quarterback by far. There's a Twitter thread on Twitter. I don't know what it's called. I don't know whose it is. You can probably go find it pretty easily. It goes through the amount of times he was hit versus the amount of times he was sacked versus the amount of times he had the ball, basically. The percentage just keeps getting higher and higher. And that's when you have Andrew Luck on a rookie deal and T.Y. Hilton on a rookie deal and all these guys like Kobe Fleener, all those rookies you drafted. So the GM started spending a lot of money on defense, and not good defensive players by any means at all either, pretty subpar defensive players. So that meant less and less money was put in the offensive line, and you could see over the years he got hit more and more and more. And the less you spent until 2015 when he got that major injury, they're spending $5 on the offensive line.
Yeah.
And you spent all that money on Frank Gore, who I love me some Frank Gore, but he was on his last leg and a half. Andre Johnson, who was done. He was over with. You signed guys like Ricky Jean Francois over the years. Who did they draft basically after the Andrew Luck draft? Do you remember any of their first-round picks up until Quentin Nelson? Or let me phrase it, up until Ryan Kelly. We'll even go.
I was going to say Ryan Kelly maybe, but...
and that was after that year, if I'm not mistaken, too. So
yeah, so no, I can't think of a single... Honestly, I can't think of a single meaningful draft pick they've had in the last... in that 3 to 4 years after Luck was drafted.
You can honestly just look at their first-round picks since they took Luck. 2013, they took Bjorn Werner. Your face kind of says it all. The pass rusher who's German from Florida State who started as a potential top 5 pick, but he quickly dropped to the point where the Colts could, actually draft him. Then in 2014, their first-round pick technically was Trent Richardson, simply because they traded it away for that running back in week 2 when the Browns were willing to part with him. I don't know why you trade a first-round pick for Trent Richardson. He had a pretty decent rookie season scoring touchdowns, but he had a buttload of carries and a terrible yards per carry. 2015, the year where it mattered the most going into that season where Luck got hurt. You have so many studs on the board still, like Malcolm Brown, the big defensive tackle. Landon Collins, the dude who just got paid for being a stud safety. You had players across the board, and what do? You take Philip Dorsett, who is basically just a guy who ran really, really fast. He's a decent receiver who had moments, and he did just win that Super Bowl with Tom Brady as basically just a cog in the system. But you can't do that to Andrew Luck when you consistently spend all this money, like bringing in Frank Gore, who I love me some Frank Gore, but he was on his final leg and a half. Yeah, I know he's still technically playing, but he's not Frank Gore that we know.
No.
He's not the Inconvenient Truth or whatever his nickname was. You bring in Andre Johnson, who was a ghost of himself. You bring in defensive players like Eric Walden, Ricky Jean-Francois, guys who you overpaid heavily for them when you just neglected your offensive line. The one decent offensive lineman they drafted before that 2015 Ryan Kelly draft, Jack Mewhort, a guard from Ohio State, he wasn't too bad, honestly. Like, he wouldn't start on this current line. He wouldn't be a starter. He'd be a flex guy, basically. But he was pretty decent until the injuries took over. You took him in, like, the late second, early third round. I mean, you can't be doing that when you have a franchise quarterback. The Patriots, they're the anomaly because they have a system. They're the perfectly built system. And they still do take offensive linemen relatively early. I mean,
but they take system offensive linemen. They don't take just like some random offensive lineman they like the film on. They take like a guy who fits their exact system the way it needs to be.
And I'm kind of happy you said system there too, because there's an old adage where they kind of said about basketball, we're like, oh, college basketball is about the coaches, where NBA is about the players, which is kind of true, which is why you see Mike Krzyzewski, John Calipari, Tom Izzo win year after year after year, regardless of who they have. I mean, obviously they get the good players. That's what makes them great. The NFL, I think it's kind of the opposite, honestly, where the college football scene is about the players and the NFL is about the coaching. You see it with the Patriots. I mean, they cycle things all around Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo, Matt Castle, Jacoby Brissett. They have a system that's pretty much foolproof. No one else has figured out yet that even devoid of talent still works. You just need a little bit of talent and a whole lot of brain, and you are good. Where in college football, you look at like Clemson and Alabama, that's good coaching, but that's because they also have 22 of the best players at their damn position across the board. I mean, you have 9 star recruits at every position, so.
Yeah.
Where I think in the NFL, I think coaching matters. Like when you get good players plus coach, you end up with the Patriots and the 49ers in the 80s and the Cowboys in the 90s, where you have the mix like that. That's when you have both, but that's due to coaching. You can't do it with just good players, which is why you see the Patriots, their offensive line is constantly good, even if they bring in different offensive linemen. They let Nate Solder go. They seem to function. The Colts, they don't really have. During that time, they didn't have a great coaching staff. I mean, they had some pretty decent guys. Pagano's a pretty good coordinator here and there, etc. But they didn't have an offensive line system that was clearly worked. They just kind of pick guys and plug and be like, oh, well, he's the best lineman in the 4th round. Let's throw him in there.
Yeah.
That's what we can afford. Let's do that. And then you have no depth whatsoever. Like, Costanzo's pretty good, but he's had some injuries too. So when he was out, they had literally nothing for a while.
Yeah, and it's hard to watch, honestly. It's like, I don't know, I guess as a lineman, I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I was a better run blocker than a pass blocker. I wouldn't want to go to a team like the Colts who was a pass first team. Like, you know, that team is predicated around the pass. As a run blocking lineman, I would rather go to a team focused on the run, like, you know, with I don't know, the Cowboys, you know, like somebody who's going to run the ball more times than they're going to pass. That's where I'd rather go. I just wouldn't want to be selected just to be selected, you know?
Well, how about this? What about a team that is unpredictable and mixes it up at least? Would that be, because that makes your job easier when you can filter and play action, or on 3rd and 1 you actually are pass blocking and the defense isn't quite ready for it.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is what the Patriots and those good teams, sorry, I did not mean to cut you off there. Like, it was perfect, because when you brought up the Colts, like during that Trent Richardson, they're like, Chuck Pagano and them, we will establish the run, we will chop wood, we will run that I formation power row with 4 tight ends or whatever the frick they would do into a 9-man front basically instead of, and then if they be down 21-10 and they're like, oh, well, shoot. Hey, Andrew Luck, remember that 4th quarter comeback thing you like to do? Yeah, we're just going to spread out and let you. That game against the Kansas City Chiefs, like, first drive, they spread it out. He goes 7 for 7 and touchdown. I remember this because this was one of the best games I've watched in my life, honestly. And I was pouting for 90% of it.
Yeah.
And then they started trying to run the ball and tried to be a team you just weren't built to be. Like, you don't have an offensive line to run power O. You don't have an offensive line to really run a spread. You got to catch people off guard. You got to run quick stick patterns, quick slant out routes, curl flats. They didn't really do that. The offensive coordinators were so many 7-step drops, 5-step drops, deep dig post high lows, not like a slant drag route like a 5-yard high low like you see a lot of other teams do. You were running a 15-yard dig and a 30-yard post. I was like, oh yeah, just kind of throw it over one guy or under the other guy.
Yeah,
you know how long that takes to develop, even if you have T.Y. Hilton and Tyreek Hill? Yeah. That doesn't exactly work that easily. So.
And you mentioned it, like they didn't have a T.Y. and Tyreek. They had a T.Y. and a Cody Fleener. They had a T.Y. and I don't even remember.
Donnie Avery, yeah. Darius Hayward-Bay, and Hakeem Nicks' ghost. I mean, he did have the goat. What was left of Reggie Wayne that first year? Reggie Wayne had 5 really good games that first year, especially that one against the Packers. The Chuck Strong game where you just every time you looked up, those orange gloves came out of nowhere and snagged the ball. But other than that, it was basically waiting till T.Y. and Andrew just were like, hey, we're pretty damn good at this. We should keep doing this.
Exactly, and nobody really was fleet of foot. Like T.Y. is your fastest guy easily.
Not even close.
And like the next fastest guy might be one of your linemen or Andrew himself.
A lot of the times, yeah. I mean, and when they were faster, they didn't use it properly. Like Darius Hayward-Bay was fast, but he wasn't scaring anybody.
He had hands of bricks. Like his hands need to go in the Hall of Fame for being the worst hands in the history of the NFL. And Philip Dorsett, a close second.
And then you look at the tight ends. Kobe Fleener was an athletic freak, but he didn't even start for a lot of those teams because he couldn't block and he wasn't the cleanest route runner, and he had dropped a lot of passes too.
Yeah.
Dwayne Allen, even the Patriots didn't want to keep him, and they like to keep the Colts leftovers just to win a Super Bowl with them. Look at Philip Dorsett. Yeah. I say that because they are still mad about Deflategate, so they got to rub it in, which another Grigson special. Oh, the ball doesn't feel right. Thanks, Grigson. Now everybody thinks now you basically made the Colts a laughingstock for those couple years since then.
Yeah.
That's off beside the point. And we're back to talk about Andrew Luck, where the more his career came on, the less they spent on the offensive line. When you get a generational quarterback like that, and you actually have a really good first draft where you get him 2 tight ends he can throw to, you get him his number 1 receiver, T.Y. Hilton. You had a really good running back in the 5th round who, unfortunately, injuries cut his career short too. And then you do things like trade for Trent Richardson and then draft Philip Dorsett. You don't do anything to help the offensive line. Sometimes you just got to overpay for offensive linemen, especially when you have that quarterback. I mean, we kind of give the Raiders shit for paying so much to Trent Brown, but he's making just about as much as the entire Patriots offensive line. They give a you-know-what about Derek Carr, honestly. Well, I don't know about John Gruden, but in theory, they're saying, like, all right, we're going to put everything around Derek Carr so we don't work, we can blame him and get rid of him, which isn't the best mentality, but it's better than, oh, he'll fix everything.
Yeah, it's okay. Andrew's got this. Like, that's. I feel like the Colts' philosophy is like, you know what? We're just going to make it, like, it's like literally putting together a fantasy baseball team when you're rotating pitchers. You don't have a solid pitching staff to rely on, so you're just like, he's the best guy for today. For the Colts, it was the same way with their offensive line. It was just like, you know what? You're going to play here today, you're going to play there today, you're going to play there today because he's all injured. And you know what? It's not really going to work, but it's cool because we got Andrew back there. Like,
hey, you were a defensive tackle last week. You're playing left tackle this week. Yeah. Like, there were years where they counted in the games like more than 30 different offensive line combinations in a year, I believe it was.
Which is crazy. You only have 16 games.
Maybe it wasn't 30. Maybe it was like 30 different offensive line.
Oh no, yeah, it was literally there were 30 at the end of the regular season. It was like 32 different combinations of offensive linemen had been used in that season, and it's just. You're literally using a half in every game. Like, how embarrassing is that?
It doesn't make sense. And
you're still winning 7-8 games with Andrew Luck.
Hell, you won 11-5 3 years in a row before his shoulder decapitated. And that year they went 8-8. How many games did they lose by like 5 points or less? I mean, I just remember looking at that season. Like, they were 8-8 and easily could have been like 11-5 again, just because. Like, they lost so many games in the last 2 to 3 minutes just because the defense was Swiss cheese, and they gave up so many points early before Andrew Luck put on his cape, came saving the day. 2017, Jacoby Brissett, you can't blame Andrew. He was sacked almost 60 times. And I know Jacoby Brissett was a young guy, still held the ball a bit to it. It's clearly not just an Andrew thing. You put a different quarterback back there who's arguably a little bit more mobile, depends on how you look at it. I think they're kind of similar.
Yeah.
And he still gets murdered left and right. And then I just don't get it. Like, whenever this is kind of speaking from afar, armchair quarterbacking, it's like you get this quarterback, you're like, this guy's winning his games. Let's keep him safe. Let's give him everything. You know what? I know you want to build a balanced team in theory, but your defense will come along if you score points and you keep your quarterback healthy.
Look, I'm gonna roll with the Saints philosophy on this. The best defense is a good offense. Like, we'll get defensive players in the draft, but we're gonna pay for everybody on offense. Like, the first year they got Drew Brees, it was And then they built an offensive line around him.
Hell, even that first year, they went to the NFC title game with that offensive line because there was such creative play calling, getting the ball out quickly, and as that offensive line gelled, they picked apart everyone, minus that 2006 Bears defense.
Exactly.
I mean, no one besides Peyton Manning really picked them apart, honestly.
And that's what's crazy is you sit there and look at these, like, the league is so offensively based, and it has been for the last 10 years. You just sit there and look at what they did with Luck, and you're just like, why? You sit there and look at the Colts games, and it's a shootout almost every week for a lot of their games, and they were paying for their defense, and that just didn't make sense. You're like, why are you going to keep paying for something that's not working?
Exactly. Like, I think they looked at the Patriots who had those great defenses, and then the great quarterback made it work. They had a great offensive line. That's why they didn't have a whole lot of expensive receivers. You can have Julian Edelmans and Chris Hogan's, Deion Branches, who are all actually really good players, honestly. Like,
they're not bad by any means. They're
like, you can have not explosive receivers per se. Granted, he also had Gronkowski, and he had some weapons. I think it's a little over. You can go without having Antonio Brown and those guys if you can protect the quarterback to make the right read and get somebody open. That they can always run the ball too. The Patriots underrated. They can run the ball. I mean, Sony Michel and James White, Cordero Patterson, like those guys.
Then Jarvis Green Ellis,
I was just thinking even just last year, those three guys. Corey Dillon. Like, when you have an offensive line, you can change things. The Peyton Manning Colts teams that unfortunately underachieved. You had a Hall of Fame left tackle, Hall of Fame center, and an arguable Hall of Fame, if not perennial Pro Bowl right tackle.
Yeah.
They kept Peyton upright the best they could. The problem was that for some reason the postseason, their offense was just so predictable and it just didn't click. Like, they ran 6 plays and the Patriots like, no, we got this.
Yeah.
But if you put like that team around Luck in today's offense with the Frank Reich play calling they have, like, or even Bruce Arians as rookie, or just play calling that makes sense, like concepts, play design, setting stuff up for the later game. We're not having this conversation. We're talking right now about how we think Luck could be a top 3 quarterback next year. He might be in an MVP race if they can.
And the Colts might be in the Super Bowl talk. You know, like we were having those conversations. Not, oh crap, will they even challenge for a playoff spot this year?
And then that kind of makes it. We're going to move ahead to what should we expect from them this year.
Yeah.
When I look at this team, you still got one of the better offensive lines in the league that's growing. You have T.Y. Hilton still, who you talked about his tweet a little bit, like how he's tweeting, I'm playing for my boy Andrew. If that's true, that man is about to come possessed, and he's about to eat everybody. He's no longer going to slide down when he does serve his body. He's going to suddenly turn into Corey Dillon and start truck sticking people in his 5'9", 105-pound frame.
Every game he's played in Houston is going to be every game he plays from now on.
Jacoby Brissett, you look his way, dang it. Then you still got Eric Ebron, where we're going to find out if his was the Andrew Luck effect or if it was just being on a different team. We're going to find out really quick, which I think he's still going to be a good tight end. I think he's going to be better than he was in Detroit by far. You got Jack Doyle coming back. The young kid, Paris Campbell, out of Ohio State. I think we all kind of liked him when we're like, wow, he was in the second round for the Colts. Wow.
Yeah, and honestly, as a guy that, let's be honest, if the Colts don't pick him in the second round, I think he slips to the third round for the Colts to pick him again.
Which is blasphemous to think, because he was arguably a late first round, early second round talent. I mean, he's
not bad for a kid who didn't have an offer from Ohio State until his senior year.
Exactly.
It's okay.
And then you put him on Frank Reich's creative offensive self, and then the guy they signed, Devin Funchess. Devin Funchess, 6'6". That's another big body for Jacoby. Screw it, he'll get it up there.
And this is the first time in a long time that I can think of a receiver coming into Indy who is a big-bodied receiver who can actually catch the ball.
And isn't 50 years old, too. I mean, he's 24, 25.
There was Akeem Nicks for a year, but he was dead.
And he was 6 foot. He wasn't even that big. He was broad-shouldered.
And Devin Funchess is a 6'5" guy who can run a 4'6", 4'4", somewhere in that range.
He's your power forward rebounder at this point.
And he can jump out of the building. He made Cam Newton look good for a lot of games where Cam Newton was not good.
He was pretty much what they thought Kelvin Benjamin would be after his rookie season. He basically was like, okay, I got this.
And so, if this is why I guess it's so hard for me with Luck not being there, is I literally look at all these weapons they have on offense, and they have a solid young defense that's just getting better, and as long as they can stay healthy, that defense is probably the best defense next to the Jaguars, if the Jaguars put it together, in that division. And
depending on how Houston, too. It's probably not as talented as Houston, Jacksonville, but, at the end of the season last year, they bent, but they didn't break. They were those Colts defense with Peyton Manning. We'll give up 20, but we're scoring 30.
Yeah, but they're so cohesive. Whereas, we talked about the Texans' defense. It's very much based off of J.J. Watt knocking the passes down.
Or Jadeveon Clowney killing a running back randomly.
Yeah, and then the Jaguars is very much based off of, all right, Jalen, you cover him. All right, everybody else, just don't let them do anything stupid.
All right, AJ Boye, you take away that guy. All right, their top 2 receivers are done. Calais Campbell, go kill that guy.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, but you talk about these Colts, that they don't have they got a couple big names. You got Darius Leonard and Malik Hooker, but, they're not big names. We know them.
They're the guys that play better than the sum of their parts, especially
Exactly.
down the stretch. Unfortunately, that does get exposed a little bit, so you got to be careful. But that was their first year together. This roster has flipped on its head, so I think with luck, this is a Super Bowl caliber team if he was healthy and clicking.
Yeah.
I think now that Jacoby's out, now that Jacoby's in and Andrew Luck is out, this is a fringe 8-8 to 9-7 type team. Like, they could make a playoff run. The one thing that's kind of curious I'm looking at is last year Marlon Mack was kind of a sensation, especially what he unfortunately did to your Cowboys. I mean,
hey, look.
And then what he did to Houston that second half, like, he came along like it was the return of the Mac all throughout that once he was healthy again after the first 3 or 4 weeks. What was kind of interesting is when you watch it, he racked up yards like it was nobody's business, but they established the pass early, and Mac 8 and killed the game because they were chasing that. Dontrell Inman, T.Y. Hilton, all those guys all over the field. In the Houston game was a perfect example. Luck eats the first half, Marlon Mack kills in the second half. What they're going to have to do this year is Marlon Mack's going to have to eat from the get-go, and can that get going?
Yeah, you can't. I honestly don't know if you can expect that performance like with the Cowboys from Marlon Mack every week. Where let's be honest,
130 yards, 2 touchdowns, probably not going to happen every week.
Like that's not going to happen every week. But I think Marlon Mack is a very good NFL running back, and he has the possibility to be great. We'll see.
He's a young guy, and you have miscellaneous running backs to go with him, which I think will help too. Like, they have a few young kids. They brought in Spencer Ware from the Chiefs. I don't know if he's even going to play, though. I haven't heard anything about it.
Yeah, whether he comes back from injury or not is a question.
And you have Naeem Hines. That kid looks like a baby Darren Sproles or Darren Sproles 2.0, some of the plays he is making. So,
and how do they use him?
Exactly. And Frank Reich's just kind of was sitting there like, ha ha ha, twiddling his fingers with what he's going to do with Andrew Luck. And now I think he's going to have to reel it back. He can still have fun. Jacoby Brissett is a bright kid. Like, the Patriots raved about him before they got rid of him. They basically I truly believe in my heart of hearts that the reason Belichick traded him is because he hates Robert Kraft for being a you-know-what hole. Yeah. With like, no, you have to keep Brady. You got to get rid of the 2 guys that are quote-unquote challenging him. Because it's kind of a coincidence both those guys were traded right around the time that stuff started coming out. So
yeah, and I think you're right, actually. I mean, it was literally looking at it, you had Jimmy Garoppolo behind Tom Brady, who was obviously the heir apparent. But you had Jacoby Brissett challenging Jimmy Garoppolo for being the heir apparent, and nobody talked about it. Nobody was like, oh, wow, that guy's actually really good. And, you saw glimpses of it in his first year in Indy.
And that was after coming, basically sent there a week before the season, like, hey, come play. Then that week 1 where the Rams absolutely torched him because they had, I don't know who that quarterback was. I just remember laughing because it was like a Nathan Peterman performance. And then Jacoby comes in and doesn't play great, but he doesn't play like trash. Like, he showed he's competent when he's not getting assaulted. Like, because that offensive line was, oh boy.
Yeah, that had some holes.
That was a hole. So I think going forward, if you can establish, I think if you can run first to set up the pass a little more often than you did last year, I mean, which obviously is different when you have Andrew Luck, both Brissett, he'll win you the games. I mean, the Seahawks tried to trade for him. They offered a 2nd-round pick, and the Colts were like, no, we're good, which at the time I was like, well, a 2nd-round pick, that could be nice. Like, but looking at it now, it's like, you know what? You got that guy, you keep him.
Yeah.
And he's playing for a contract, which could be an underrated factor. I mean, there's something magical about guys in that contract year. Sometimes they overperform.
And he's another guy where, they're talking about they're playing for 12. I mean, you heard in the press conference with Andrew Luck, he talked about how close of friends they were.
After resenting him, too.
Yeah, after,
have you seen that kind of transparency from a professional athlete ever? I mean,
I don't think I've ever.
Like, you hear other professional athletes like, nope, just here so I don't get fined. Not make fun of them, Marshawn Lynch, or anything like that. It's like, oh, he's a great player, like, every week, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's just like, no, I hated that guy, but then I met him.
He had my spot. Like, I wanted my spot back. Like, I'm jealous of him.
And then you talk to him, he's like, God, what a great dude. So, honestly, Colts fans, they should be excited for that. You have Jacoby Brissett there.
Yeah, I think Colts fans, when you look at this season coming up, like, I've told you, I think they can make the playoffs.
But they got to click right away.
They're going to have to win a couple early, and then you're going to run in that midseason lull right around the bye week. I just assume it's going to happen, but they need to win out 6 out of the last 7 out of the last 8.
And I think
they can make the playoff game, and they can make a playoff spot, and we've seen it in the playoffs.
You just got to get in sometimes.
Yeah, you just got to make it, and then whatever happens after that happens. You never know. And yeah, I think long term from now, we're going to be looking at this being like, okay, that wasn't so bad. But
this
right now,
Colts
it's
team bounced back. It was okay. Like, you lost generational talent, but you saved a lot of money and built around it. Like, they could turn it to the Cowboys, honestly, for example, with, honestly, a better quarterback, depending on how you look.
Yeah,
we
much
haven't
better
seen enough
quarterback.
of Jacoby Brissett to know that, but...
You know what? He's already better than Dak. So he can throw the ball more than 10 yards accurately.
By the way, Jacoby Brissett's arm. My God, Frank Rice can have fun with that. I remember that Hail Mary, the one pass he really threw this year against the Eagles. Like, oh, he has a stronger arm. We're still recovering with Luck's arm. We're not sure. So we're going to have him throw the Hail Mary. He throws out of the back of the end zone casually while running.
He's a stud. I mean, Jacoby Brissett coming out of NC State, nobody really talked about him. But the kid put up numbers at NC State. I mean, he broke records that Russell Wilson had set at, there.
And what's crazy is I read this thing on Twitter about him. So it was from a guy with a check mark. It was a quote-unquote esteemed sports reporting person. I'm going to presume it's 100% true. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But basically, when he transferred, like, the rule is you're not allowed to travel that first year with the team. Yep. He drove to every single game and watched that to be with his teammates and watch them basically get their ass whooped because they weren't any good until he got there, really.
And I don't know if anybody knows anything about the ACC, but if you don't, you're going to Boston College, as far north, and then as far south as Miami.
And everywhere in between, all of Virginia's, everything.
And the whole coast. And that's not easy drives. Those are, first of all, there's tolls going down to Miami. There's tolls going up to Boston. Then on top of that, that's another 9 to 10 hours north, 9 to 10 hours south. Like, that's not an easy drive.
A lot of times you could be driving kind of near the coast where the roads can be a little questionable.
And it's not something that's expected of you. You're a transfer quarterback who's not playing with the team this season. You're not on the team, and nobody expects you to travel with them because nobody does.
If nothing else, you're getting a young kid who clearly has a bunch of leadership intangibles, a very likable guy with a rocket arm, and is clearly not a trash panda, basically.
Yeah, he's a good dude, and
he's probably not going to be Andrew Luck. His peak will probably never be Andrew Luck's peak. I mean, that's an unfair comparison, but doesn't mean you can't win with him. So, Colts, I think you'll be okay. This sucks. You're in much better hands now than like when Peyton left that first year when Peyton was injured, or like when Luck was injured the first time.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about a Curtis Painter coming in to replace your quarterback. You have a guy that's
you
have a guy that's got some promise to him. I mean, I look at him and I see
he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I mean, everyone seems to think it.
And I see a young Steve McNair. I mean, I really do. I think his athletic ability is on par with McNair's. I think he's probably better running.
I think he's got a lot of McNabb too, like that's that type of quarterback, like maybe a more modern day version.
Yeah, and he's just still a pass first guy though. He's not. He'll use his legs when he has to, but he can win the game with his arm if he needs to.
It's funny because he's like an athletic quarterback, but like Andrew Luck ran a faster 40 than he did. Like it's one of those things. Like
it's one of those things. I think it's because he's black, and we talk about this in the pros. It's you get a white quarterback, they're always a pocket passer. You get a black quarterback, they're always an athletic guy, and I think. You saw that this year with Dwayne Haskins. Yeah. The dude's a pocket passer.
And he ran a 5 flat 40, and some guys on ESPN who won't be called out by name called him a scrambling quarterback.
Stephen A. What?
Anyway, that guy can't move at all, but he throws from the pocket. It's like Byron Leftwich back there. He even made the joke. He's like, yeah, I'm the one black quarterback who can't run, but he can throw the ball a mile.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I don't know why we do it to athletes, why we stereotype them like that. Jacoby Brissett is just a good quarterback.
Who I think is going to get better in this offense, especially. Could you ask for a better situation to be a young quarterback in? You had to sit behind Andrew Luck for like 2 years, too, while already getting in-game experience. And the team just got better around you, and now all the cap space they were
Oh, and let's not forget, by the way, you also played for the Patriots before that, and you got to learn from, Tom Brady while injured, but still got to learn from the guy, Jimmy Garoppolo. And for as much as I hate the guy, Bill Belichick as well.
And then Josh McDaniels, too. For as much of a babyface goober as he is, the man knows how to coach offense.
Like, as much as I will hate on the Patriots for forever, I will say this, that I don't think there's a better run system in the NFL
not even close.
Than what the Patriots have done.
In the history of football, nothing compares.
And he came into that. And it wasn't like they jettisoned him like a Ryan Mallett jettison.
They got rid of him almost reluctantly, it felt like. It's like, well, we can't say no to Philip Dorsett, and a pick, I think it was, too.
It was, it was a gratuitous enough offer that you're just like, I mean, I don't want to take advantage of you, Colts, but you're kind of taking advantage of us by us letting Jacoby go. Like this, I just don't look at it as being a terrible thing. I mean, obviously you're losing Andrew Luck, but
it could be worse.
We talked about it in other episodes. I mean, we weren't even sure he was going to start this season, so
I think it could be much worse for them. You're losing the Hall of Fame quarterback, which I'm going to kind of bring this full circle because this is a thing I saw too. After he only played like 30-ish more games than Peyton Manning, which is kind of crazy to think about because it's like we're drafting him for 15 years as opposed to Peyton for 5. First of all, I'm going to break this down for everybody who didn't really watch a lot of those Colts games in 2012 when Andrew Luck's rookie year. If they kept Peyton and put him behind that offensive line, that man would be literally dead.
Yeah.
With a neck like that coming back, the amount of times Luck got hit, Peyton would have got hit twice as much because he wasn't breaking tackles or moving. I don't want to hear this, he gets the ball out quick. Who's he throwing to that year? T.Y. Hilton was not established yet. Reggie Wayne was basically on his last leg. I'm sure they'd had fun for 5 games. Your tight ends were rookies. The entire team was flipped on its head.
Yeah.
The offensive line, the one remaining piece was Costanzo, and he wasn't quite as good as he is now because that was his second year, I believe, maybe even third year. Peyton Manning, what he did with Denver with Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker, Julius Thomas, Wes Welker, that offensive line, that system, that's completely different than what he'd done in Indy. He would have been good in Indy. They probably would have made the playoffs that year if he finished the season. However, okay, let's say you trade that first pick and you load up with draft picks. How many offensive linemen that can you draft that are rookies that are going to block him? The top pick in that draft was Matt Khalil, the left tackle for offensive linemen. Do you know where Matt Khalil is right now? Because I think he's in Carolina is not very good. So
did he just retire and then come back? Oh, no, that was Ryan Khalil.
No, I think it might have been Matt. See, this is the point. Like, clearly there wasn't an offensive lineman at the top of that draft worth taking. RG3 was the other guy. Ryan Tannehill, Trent Richardson. Basically, they take Luke Kuechly and keep Peyton Manning. That's the only way. It's like, okay. That's assuming Peyton Manning doesn't get snapped in half.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
And this is a Peyton Manning that's already been snapped in half how many times? And by the way, runs a 7 flat.
Exactly.
40. Like, his rollout time is equivalent of a Boeing 747 being pushed, like, taxied on a runway. He is not with the jets on. It's literally being pushed by a little cart type slow. It's awful.
Like, this isn't the Peyton Manning we saw in Denver. That's not the one you get in Indy because he was good in Denver. He started a little slow, if people forget. Like, they were, I think, 3-3 at one point before they took off that first year. And that's with weapons and a well-run organization and a defense. Like, in Indy, he would have got hammered. Can you imagine how many times he'd have to get hit by J.J. Watt? My God, behind that offensive line.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot one of his tight ends, by the way, for Andrew Luck's rookie year. Joel Dreesen. Do you remember Joel Dreesen?
Exactly.
Exactly. His most famous play is catching a pass for 20 yards for Peyton Manning in a Broncos uniform 2 years after Andrew Luck got drafted.
Exactly.
And it was like a reincarnation of Joel Dreesen coming back to Peyton Manning.
Exactly. So basically that's kind of the one thing that when you really look at it, to say the Colts screw up getting rid of Peyton Manning for Andrew Luck, that's not entirely true when you look at the scenario. Like, you're saying, like, Peyton Manning's better. Well, no crap. I think everyone thought Peyton Manning's going to be better even if Andrew Luck played 15 years. I think we were going to... Peyton Manning's a top 3 to 5 quarterback all time. He's the best regular season quarterback we have ever seen. Yeah. If he had a little bit better postseason success, he's probably up there with Tom Brady, honestly, depending on how you break it down. Honestly, some people say he's a better quarterback than Brady, but he wasn't in Brady's system. It depends how you break it down. He's a top 5 quarterback of all time. Andrew... let's say he continues at this trajectory, wins 2 Super Bowls, he's still probably like 12 to 13 at best. Like, he's probably not going to reach Peyton Manning status. That's rarefied air. Obviously, he's not. What you were drafting for is A, you're not going to be able to keep Peyton Manning healthy because he's going to die. B, you take Andrew Luck on a rookie contract, you can build around him in theory. You're supposed to. Obviously, they did a trash job of it.
Yeah.
Like, if they had a competent GM and stuff and regime set in place, this isn't a conversation. So that's just the one thing I kind of want to point out because I saw a lot of people like, you should have kept Peyton Manning. You got rid of Peyton for this guy, bro. What are you doing? Like, it's just very narrow-minded thinking, which I think is kind of the cesspool of sports, unfortunately.
We talked about the fans a little bit earlier. I just wanted to circle back to that. You talked about cesspool of sports and the fans booing him coming off the field, and you kind of saw that right there. It was very raw and very unapologetic. And it was a lot of people that probably don't know what's going on and have never – they're probably armchair quarterbacks who have never played a down of football other than Pee Wee in their life. And, to boo a guy like Andrew Luck, who has literally put everything on the line for a team, I have a hard time sitting well with that. I understand it's raw, but –
how do you boo the guy that did so much for you? Maybe you yelled something like, don't go.
At a preseason game. Let's not forget, this is a preseason. We're not even talking like he did this at a regular season. This is a freaking preseason game where he wasn't even planned to play.
And let's not forget, it's not like he released this at that time. He was planning on doing it tomorrow. He was on the sideline with his teammates like he always is, talking to them. Like, he was basically keeping his normal as possible. And suddenly, by the way, hey, Andrew, everybody knows. He's like, shoot, well, okay, I can't exactly avoid this now.
Yeah.
He even says, like, all right, guys, this is fitting. My last press conference is in a damn T-shirt.
Yeah, and sorry, mom, I can't clean up. And he talked about having to at late night talking up with with former teammates and current teammates and some of the guys. And you feel for a guy like that because he wanted to do it the right way. He was still showing support for a team that he wasn't going to play for tomorrow. But at the same time, he's like, these guys still need to know that I'm with them, even though I can't be with them physically.
It probably won't happen, but it would be pretty cool if, like, for the home opener, they brought back Andrew Luck and let him maybe walk off the field or something like that, be an honorary captain, just a chance to get some cheers. If people boo, I mean, that sucks, but at least he'll have, I imagine he'll be surrounded by cheers. I mean, like,
yeah.
I feel like it's only like that 3% booing where that 97% would support him. It's kind of like the smallest minority is oftentimes the loudest, especially when it comes to ridiculous things like. There's only Doug Gottlieb's the only idiot who actually thinks that, I'm pretty sure, but everyone heard his opinion, unfortunately.
We haven't seen the president's tweets yet, so who knows after he gets a hold of his Twitter account.
Moving forward. But
anyways, yeah, it's like at this point it's a weekly. We got to get it in the show at some point in time.
And I'll just go back to Doug Gottlieb. What are you doing, sir? Like, what was your thought process?
Talk about a cesspool.
Especially when a guy who's literally in trouble for credit card fraud. I mean, like, you literally stole credit cards because working was too hard. Torrey Smith with the burn of the year, by the way.
Yeah, that was the greatest burn I think I've seen to anybody saying anything.
And then Troy Aikman roasting him too. It's like, I understand, like, he almost wants to be like a Skip Bayless figure. The problem is Skip Bayless is kind of playing a contrarian a little bit. Like, he wants to think outside the box and be right, but he's not really an asshole, I don't think. He just kind of says things for ratings. I think Doug Gottlieb is kind of an asshole, unfortunately. Like, even there have been some tweets that said stuff like that. Like, just what are you thinking? Like, that's just kind of reckless. Like, you're not quitting in the middle of a game. You're not pulling one of those. You're not saying you're playing, and then at the end of the day you say, nah, never mind. You're not throwing your helmet or throwing a temper tantrum or fighting a net. You were literally planning on leaving the game Sunday after a game, announcing it, because you are broken and you don't want to be crippled for life.
Yeah. It's not like, what was the guy from the Bills a couple years back?
Vontae Davis.
Vontae Davis.
Former Colt, by the way.
That retirement.
That was a little
where he was just like, you know what? I'm not coming out for the second half. I'm retired.
That one could probably count as quitting, unfortunately, just because of the way it went down. And
even Vontae Davis came out in support of Andrew Luck. Out of all, he did tweet his support towards it, and so that's like even Vontae Davis recognizes like the dude didn't deserve that. Like Gottlieb, I don't know what he's thinking, but this is like I don't know whether he was trying to just troll or he was just being legitimate. And I don't know. I think. The dude doesn't deserve. He's up there in my book of not deserving a Twitter at that point. Like you can't say
a lot of his stuff that he has, unfortunately.
Get rid of that blue check
talking
mark.
About him, yeah.
Get rid of that Fox contract. But you're right. I think that's the only reason he has a contract is because he does stupid stuff like that and people talk about him.
Which is unfortunate too, like because it kind of takes away from the thing that we're seeing a promising young quarterback retire with arguably 8 years left in his career, but all we're talking about is, why this, why that? Basically all the negative stuff about it. We're not focusing on what he did in a short time.
Yeah.
And honestly, moving forward. Good on him. He's going to have a good life the rest of the way. I guarantee you, he's not going to be too worried about this in 4 years. When he's 40, he's not going to be looking back like, gosh, I should have played. He'll probably be looking back like, thank God I can walk still. Thank God I can pick up my kid and maybe throw the football with his kid in the backyard.
And to be honest, I see him being like what we see at a lot of college games, where you see the guys who recently graduated 10 years, 20 years ago. You see him on the sideline supporting their team still. Or you look at Matthew McConaughey supporting Texas as an alum, always on the sideline.
Will Ferrell with USC.
Will Ferrell, yeah.
Why did I say Pete Carroll? What was I thinking?
And, I could see, honestly, Andrew Luck doing that and being, honestly, one of the first recent guys to really do that and be on the sideline for his team, supporting his team in that type of role. I do think he'll play a large part mentally for the team going forward, but I don't know. You're right. We are focusing on a lot of negatives and not what he did. So, in that vein, do you want to talk about what he did?
Well, let's just look at it. 11-5, 11-5, 11-5. Out in the first round to the future Super Bowl champion Ravens that year. The next year, you win a playoff game against the Chiefs, one of the greatest comeback evers. I think
28 point.
Yeah, second largest in NFL history, if not first.
I think the first largest playoff.
If not, it's right up there with that music. Well, not the Music City Miracle, but like that one that Frank Reich of all people led back in the day. And then, unfortunately, you lose to the Patriots in the next round. Everyone loses to the Patriots in Foxborough. The year after that, you shut out the Bengals. You whoop them. And then you beat Peyton Manning in Denver. You outgunned Peyton Manning in Denver. Unfortunately, after that, you got destroyed by the Patriots, and that was really Andrew Luck's. That was the last game before he started getting injured, unfortunately. They underperformed. Then after that, misses a lot of games the next year, has all the injuries, the kidney, all that. doesn't play a whole lot. And by the way, this is all while basically being the top 3 for touchdowns in his first year, second year, third year, yards, all that stuff. Rookie passing yards record at the time. Broke it the year after Cam said it.
Yep.
And then his next year after that, 2015, 2016, he's still not healthy, by the way. That shoulder's still broken. He sets his, at the time, career best in completion percentage, 31-ish touchdowns. I'm looking at the numbers here, over 4,000 yards, 11 interceptions, so really more than like 2.75 to 1 touchdown interception ratio. Not too bad. I mean, that's pretty much Tom Brady, Peyton Manning type numbers throughout their career.
That's, I think, better than any of them had in their first 5 years, too.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, and then you look at the next year is, of course, the 2017 year when everything's broken, it doesn't work. Then this last year, his career best for completion percentage, coming off a dead arm. He threw it, I think, in the top 5 number of throws in the league, too, because he had a few games there where he was throwing it 60 times a game. He had, I think it was 39 touchdowns, I think it was. His second most in his career, because he had 40 that one year they went to. I think only like, he did have quite a few picks, about 14-ish or so, but I mean.
But second in touchdowns to, what, Patty?
Yeah, just to Patty Mahomes, yeah. And 65, 66% completion over, he was top 5 in yards, like, and that's after a terrible first, 6 games where he's pretty average for a lot of it. And that was all leading a team to an improbable run that unfortunately got stalemated by that Chiefs team that I think was just ready to play.
Yeah. Well, I think the Colts last season, because of Andrew Luck, I think they exceeded expectations.
They overachieved beyond belief, and they just got. Sometimes the team just gets rolling, and they got rolling, and it got them on the cusp. But then, unfortunately, you run into a buzzsaw that's been there all year. We see this happen pretty often, honestly. So it's a shame that our last memories of Andrew Luck losing a playoff game to the Chiefs, when arguably one of his greatest moments is winning a playoff game against the Chiefs.
And let's not forget that Chiefs team struggled against the Colts many, many years until this last season in the playoffs.
I mean, they kept Patrick Mahomes out of the end zone. It was Travis Kelce all the way to the red zone, and then they ran it in. So it's They played pretty well. They made plays. They came up short. It happens. But Andrew Luck's been a magic man for the Colts. He brought hope back to this team when they thought it was gone when Peyton Manning left. He revitalized. Basically, we were talking how do the Colts fans get so lucky you go from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck? It's a shame it ends early, unfortunately, but people keep forgetting. Y'all must have forgot.
Yeah.
That dude was that dude for so long until, unfortunately, you can only take so many hits. I mean, that dude looks like he's been an IndyCar driver his whole career and just crashed every single time.
Yeah, and it is bad. I mean, I just keep going back to that press conference and just seeing his face. And if you guys haven't seen the press conference yet, go look at it. It's all over Twitter. It's all over Facebook. All over YouTube. The guy is beaten, broken down. He looks like a guy who's just literally. He looks like Atlas carrying the earth, and then all of a sudden somebody just came by and said, "Hey, let me hold that for you," and all this weight was just lifted off the man. I mean. Yeah, I said earlier, he looks like a guy who just got told he has to give up his love, which is true, but he looks like a very relieved guy who just got told he had to give up his love.
You could tell it killed him to say that, but as he was going through, he's like, this is what's right, it has to be done. So in the end, I think the league is going to be, it sucks to see Andrew Luck leave. We talked about, the league is better when AB was playing. We talked about him in the helmet saga.
Yeah.
The league is better when Andrew Luck was playing. We're all going to miss him. I mean, he's a stud player. Just watching him play is fun. Even if you hate the Colts and you despise Andrew Luck for some reason, you got to respect his game, honestly. I mean,
although I don't think any of us are going to miss him as much as T.Y. is going to miss him.
Who's not going to miss him is probably Tennessee Titans, a team that he never lost to either.
But yeah, T.Y., we mentioned it earlier, that tweet T.Y. had, and that's kind of how I want to close this out, is that dude playing for his brother this season. And, we joked about every game that T.Y.'s played in Houston is going to be every game this season. It's possible because that man's never been this motivated. He's always been motivated. But
sometimes you find a little something extra. I think we find a little something. So either this could be T.Y.'s explosion of all time, or maybe they just had something special. Jacoby, look for that man. That's all we can say.
Exactly.
Honestly. You got a rocket, you unleash that rocket.
And it's going to be something fun to watch, watching the Colts grow from this. I'm more curious, honestly, to know what Andrew Luck's next plans are. That's kind of my thought on it. Is I want to know what his next plans are because the dude's a brilliant guy.
I mean, he has a stake in body armor. He has we talked about his degree from Stanford, and he can have a 6-figure job tomorrow, just doing whatever he wants, honestly. And he's made so much money, who cares? Yeah. Which, by the way, good on the Colts organization. With that $24.5 million he was owed, they're like, no, you can just keep it. Dude, they basically worked something out instead of remember Calvin Johnson when he retired? The line's we want that $5 million back.
Yeah.
Colts, they work something out and just let it go. Good on their organization. Good on them for working that out, not letting it end ugly like that. I mean, Clearly, they know how much he meant to the organization. They hate to see him go.
And
Granted, I think they were the ones who leaked it, unfortunately. I think that was a last-ditch attempt. Like, if we leak it, he'll change his mind.
yeah, maybe, and I think this is kind of an Irsay play. It seems very Irsay-ish.
It has Irsay written all over it.
And unfortunately, that's never what you want to have. It might cause some bad blood down the road, but I mean, you just saw the press conference, how happy he was, how lovable he was with the team, how much he loved that organization, and I don't know, man. It's a heart-wrenching, heartwarming story at the same time. Like, it is so hard. Like, and as for you as a Colts fan, I imagine it's worse. But as me as an NFL fan, as a football fan, as a sports fan, I hate seeing a guy lose his career because of injuries, especially losing such a promising career because of injuries. And I especially hate a good dude having to lose it. Like, he is a good dude, and he had the world ahead of him, and I hate seeing it.
And the best part is he still has the world ahead of him, which is probably the best part about this retirement. He has his whole life ahead of him. So, on behalf of football fans and Colts fans, I'll specify us as well, but football fans in general, thank you to Andrew Luck for everything you've done. It has been a pleasure. Do you have anything else you'd like to add really quick? Or?
No, absolutely. Thank you, Andrew Luck. You've made watching football that much more fun. So
good luck in your next endeavors, and thank you for tuning in for this special episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. Hopefully, you don't have any more kind of like this one anytime soon. That was a little rough.
Yeah, let's not have any more.
No more random retirements from guys from injury or anything like that. Let's just continue talking about games and player rankings from here on out.
Yeah, I'm gonna go shed a tear now. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you guys next week for our regular scheduled episodes. Thank you.